Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede. You respect. You don't stop. You don't.
Well, thank God for Lady Gaga.
Ooh, shit is crazy, y'all. I gotta come back. I gotta comment on all this. Pandemic, political unrest, climate change. Pull the front seat, I got some words. But first, hi, it's been a minute. When last we met, I put my heart and soul into my book and had nothing left. So I had to find my heart and soul again and couch surf down the East Coast, interviewing the most interesting people that I could find in the hopes that they could tell me something about myself. But after about 2 months, 1,300 miles, and countless personalities, I realized you can't learn who you are by listening to other people. You discover who you are by living, by doing. So, my buddy Chase and I moved back to Chicago. I started working on a new book that took place here. And this time around, I wanted to write a book that pushed me so far out of my comfort zone. Enlighten myself on what it's like to be a different sex or race. Not because I wanted to write a book about racism or sexism. I don't think I'm qualified for that, but to write a hardcore sci-fi starring this badass curvy sophomore at a school downtown. She was an orphan dealing with the rich girl, bully vibes, and one day a new cute boy shows up in town and her and her classmates get whisked away on this Hunger Games-y style adventure in space. It was just a fun little book. But when I went to New York to try and sell it, nobody wanted it. Wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I was just like, it was just like, why? And their answer was, because I'm not black. And I'm just like, well, I'm not a woman either. And that doesn't seem to be where the problem is. So what's going on here? It's fiction. I'm not writing a memoir, it's fiction. I'm not even straight, and nobody bats an eyelash if I write a main character that's straight. As a little homo growing up, seeing my first commercial starring 2 gay people, it's been very validating to see someone like me. Why are you denying some little black kid from seeing this epic space adventure on the shelf with a main character that looks like them? They're just sitting here being a bunch of gatekeepers, actively denying colorful protagonists because they don't agree with the skin color of the author. Even if the book has more to do with space than sex, or relativity than race, doesn't matter. I guess I'm still butthurt about that. Anyway, getting over the shelving of a book, putting your heart and soul into something for years, only to have it dead on arrival, is kind of devastating. Would not recommend, but luckily, in the midst of that, I met the love of my life. And I couldn't have gone through it without him. Babe! What? Come here, let me show you to the people. No! Okay, hi, this is Roy. So yes, we're deeply in love. We were supposed to be married this year, but obviously that didn't happen.
It sucks, and I hope it will still happen this year.
Yeah. So when they shot down my book, I was a wreck, if you recall, and you had a brilliant idea to pull me out of it.
Well, I just said, start writing a new, small short story, right? You know, every day or every week, you let me read it so I can help understand your writing. And the first one that you wrote just took off.
Yeah, it became so what started as a short story became a 600-page, 2-part epic that I'm still working on right now. So it's great. It was a great idea. As crazy as everything was out there, at least we had our own little happy bubble in here. Got my man, got my book, and got my dog. Come here, Lance. Lance, boop, come here. Pooch. What is it? We've had him for a year now. We got him just at the beginning of the pandemic. Right back in March. He's a Shiba Inu. He's a Doge. Yeah, he loves sniffing your breath. And we're a big, little quarantine happy family.
High five. Good job.
Okay, that's it. Okay, bye. Speaking of quarantine, it's almost a year ago today, actually, that I walked out of work thinking I'd be back in 2 weeks. Little did I know, I'll probably never see a lot of those people who I spent my daily life with, you know, ever again. Weird, and also kind of sums up last year entirely, thinking. It always seemed to get worse than you thought it would. Culminating with... That was really the last kick in the ass to get back on here and talk about some things. If last year has taught me anything, it's that we are currently living through the age of misinformation. Post-truth. And this is a huge, scary problem. The internet is seriously fucking with our ability to see the world properly. Sure, it's a great place to find resources if you know what you're looking for and know what's credible, but if you don't, you are shit out of luck, blind leading the blind. Any Joe Schmo can post something posing as an insider under the name Q and fool tens of thousands of people into believing absolute bullshit. The touch of a button. Its insane power requires insane delicacy, empowerment, really, to navigate. And us as a species are just not there yet, not there to understand the depth of complexity of the internet. I mean, for God's sakes, y'all seen The Social Dilemma? Shit is scary. Shit can go out of control real quick, as we all saw after the insurrection. So I have to do something. I can't just sit by and watch all this fester and not do anything. And it's taken me since the insurrection to figure out just what one person can do against the tens of hundreds of thousands of conspirators and misinformers and trolls all over the world. And the answer I came up with isn't much. At least it's just not that complicated. And if we're going to uphold freedom of speech, you can't silence these people, although I'm really glad Parler's gone. But the solution is just to balance the equation out. Balance out the hate with respect. Balance out the misinformation with truths. And I want to do that through stories, because that's just how I see the world. It's a bunch of stories. Nowadays, I like to think of the human experience as sort of stepping into a theater. And in the theater is playing a perpetual movie that nobody knows when it will end, and quite frankly, nobody knows when it began either. Our lives simply consist of us shuffling into the theater, sitting down, watching for a few years, and if we're lucky, maybe adding a few lines of dialogue to it before we have to shuffle out again and off this mortal coil. So really the only way to understand what's going on is to, when you sit down, ask the person next to you to catch you up to speed. And based on what that person says, it will affect how you interpret the entire rest of the movie. For me personally, the movie seems real complicated, and one opinion just seems too vague to really understand the whole thing. So I want another opinion, and maybe a third opinion. I want as many opinions as physically possible so that I can get to something close to the truth of what's really going on. What's going on in that goddamn movie? What's going on in this world? But so many people don't want a second opinion or a third opinion. They stop after the first and say, I've got it now. Which means that most people in the world are experiencing the world completely out of context. They're in Plato's cave, seeing shadows on the wall and thinking that that's reality. Not understanding that that's only shadows. Just imagine the beauty that they're missing out on. Imagine never seeing the sun and then suddenly stepping out of the cave. Well, I want to help people step out of the cave. So I want to use this channel to tell stories from cultures all around the world, all throughout time, not in an appropriative way, in a celebratory way. Because the problem with being a human being is that you only have one point of view. You know, imagine how myopic Game of Thrones would seem if we only ever heard from Cersei's point of view. Like, you'd have a completely warped view of Westeros and, frankly, a wrong view. I want to be that guy in the movie theater next to you that helps you catch up to speed. I want to be just one of the opinions, because the only way that you can find the truth is by understanding the relationships between everyone's point of view. Because now I've become obsessed with getting as many different points of view as possible and trying to look at the world not only historically, but physically and astronomically and spiritually and biologically and sociologically and psychologically and politically, all at the same time. Only then can we start to form a view of the world that is something close to reality. If we all tried to look at the world like that, I think, well, the world would be a lot better place. I think we would all be able to forgive each other for our shortcomings. We'd all have a little bit more grace. And that's what I want to achieve here. If for no one else, then at least myself. And my books, which I do hope people read one day. And this feeling, I mean, it started at the insurrection, yeah, but I didn't really understand it. It didn't get put into words until I heard Jane Fonda's speech accepting the Cecil B. DeMille Award.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Storytelling has always been essential. You see, stories have a way they can change our hearts and our minds. They can help us see each other in a new light, to have empathy, to recognize that for all our diversity, we are humans first. That's why all of the great conduits of perception, Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, Lao Tse, all of them spoke to us in stories and poetry and metaphor, because the non-linear, non-cerebral forms that are art speak on a different frequency. And they generate a new energy that can jolt us open and penetrate our defenses so that we can see and hear what we may have been afraid of seeing and hearing.
I'm obsessed with that. Art changes people. Politics is so toxic right now. As soon as you bring up politics, everyone's walls go up and they just stop listening because they already know the answer. Again, first opinion only. But with art, something that triggers emotion, brings walls down. That's moving, that's eye-opening. And that's what I want to do. I think that's the only solution to the polarization and misinformation that we're living through right now. And if you agree, consider subscribing, because we got a lot of work to do.